You are listening to Perplexity.
Throughout history, there have been numerous accounts of people claiming to have heard the voices of the dead. The phenomenon of voices from beyond the grave has captured the public's imagination for centuries, sparking endless debates and speculations. Some people report hearing faint whispers, while other people describe full-blown conversations with spirits from the afterlife. The voices are said to emanate from unexpected places, the wind, an empty room, or even directly inside your own mind. Believers in this phenomenon argue these paranormal experiences provide proof of life after death, offering a tantalizing glimpse into the great beyond. Critics, on the other hand, dismiss these claims as being nothing more than the product of overactive imaginations, sensory distortions, or even deception. But what happens when a woman is murdered and her voice is allegedly heard from beyond the grave, refusing to rest until her killer is caught? This is the story of Teresita Basa, also known as the Voice from Beyond the Grave case. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Perplexity, a mystery podcast. As always, I am your host, Kaydra, and if you're new here, hello and welcome. I tell tales every week that have perplexed me. So if you love a good mystery that leaves you wanting more, don't worry, you're in the right place. And be sure to follow along if you enjoy. And I am so excited because today, it's been a long time coming, I have my sister back on the podcast.
Yes, hello everyone.
We have missed you so much.
I have missed y'all too. It's been far too long since episode 17. So we're back. We're better than ever. We're ready to
It
get
was
going.
17. Yeah. This is episode 74, if you can believe it. It's been that long.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm so proud of you. I mean, I love the progress that you've made, and I'm so happy to be here again and to hear this story that you have for me today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Yeah, I have been letting my guests choose the genre. So, Karlisa, what genre did you pick for us?
True crime.
Yes, Karlisa's a true crime girly, but y'all know me. I can't just bring any true crime case. It has to have some really crazy spins on it. So if you could tell by the intro, this is not just true crime. There's a heavy paranormal element too. So I am excited, and I just want to issue a quick trigger warning because this podcast is not for children. There's going to be some disturbing adult content. So listener discretion is advised, and all of the sources that were used for today's episode will be down in the show notes. So without further ado, let's get into it. So if you guys end up really liking this story and you want to learn more, it was featured on the 1990s Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack, the OG, and it has been documented in the book Houses of Horror by Richard Weinger. And I mean, it's a really crazy story, so you might want to read that book and check it out. So I thought we would start off first by talking about a woman named Teresita Basa. Teresita was born in the Philippines in 1929 to prominent business couple Pedro and Socorro Basa. She would later leave her home country after graduating from the University of Assumption, Manila in 1960. She would then move to the United States to pursue her passion of music. Teresita loved the piano, and she would later change paths. She ended up going into healthcare, but she still always loved music. She would end up getting her degree in respiratory therapy. She practiced as an RT at Edgewater Hospital in Chicago, Illinois. Teresita was known to be quiet and unassuming, and I normally like to learn a lot about victims, but I really could not find much of anything about Teresita online. So just know that's not intentional. This is just the information I have. So she seems like she was kind and quiet, just was a hard worker. We really don't know much else about her, unfortunately.
Can I just say, she looks precious. Like I'm looking at these pictures of her, she just looks adorable.
Doesn't she look so sweet?
Yes, she does. Like I want to sit down and I want to have tea with her and I want to hear about her life.
Yeah, I know. And as always, I'll put all these pictures on the Instagram page. They'll be in the YouTube video as well. But yeah, she just has a very pleasant appearance. So in the slideshow, Carlisa, you'll see she was 48 years old at the time that this event would take place. So it would be February 21st, 1977, that tragedy would strike. Earlier that day, Teresita had gone to work like normal. She talked to her friend, a woman named Ruth Loeb, for just about 30 minutes. She said that she had wrapped up her shift and she was getting ready to go home because she had a male friend to meet up with. This was an unnamed male friend. It doesn't seem like it was romantic or anything because Teresita was actually in a relationship. It was just a friend of hers, but she didn't give a name or specify what they were meeting up for.
Okay.
So she left the hospital, according to Ruth, at about 5:30 p.m. And later that same evening, the fire department would respond to a call put out by neighbors Mario and Catherine Nas at 2740 North Pine Grove Avenue in Lincoln Park, stating that Teresita Basa's 15th floor apartment at Pine Grove Avenue Apartments, apartment 15B to be exact, had burst into flames. And the seventh slide is where you will see the damage and what people would find when they got into the apartment. So, like I said, Teresita was known to be quiet, unassuming, but it seemed that she had been the victim of a robbery because they go inside and the house is completely ransacked.
Yeah, no, I was noticing the same thing. I was looking at these pictures because it says inside of 15B after the fire. And it looks like the place was ransacked and robbed. I see, at least from the pictures, I don't see any evidence of any sort of fire or
Yeah,
anything
it
crazy.
is in black and it is in black and white, but the fire department would luckily put out the fire before it would spread to the other apartments, but they immediately are like, "Oh, this was a fire to cover up a robbery." Like the
Mm-hmm.
whole house was completely trashed. And to make matters much, much worse, after the fire department would put out a fire that was on this mattress that was in the middle of the room and like a pile of clothes, they would find Teresita's nude body underneath the mattress.
Oh my
She
gosh.
had a stab wound in the chest because a giant butcher knife had been plunged into it.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yes, this murder is very brutal. She was lying on her back, eyes open as well. And police, just quickly put together this was all an attempt to cover up maybe a robbery gone wrong, or maybe they wanted to murder Teresita and then make it look like a robbery, but clearly the fire was a cover up for some type of crime.
Well, and you said she was nude, right? So I'm wondering if there's some sort of sexual aspect of some sort behind it.
Right. Yeah, we will get into that actually right now. So her body had been posed in such a way that it looked like she could have been sexually assaulted. And like Carlisa said, she was nude. But what was interesting is after her autopsy was done, it would be found that there were no signs of sexual assault and Teresita had not been raped by whoever had done this. So it's not clear why she was nude.
Well, in other cases, I know that I've heard people do that to kind of tear down like make them feel, what's the word I'm looking for? Like kind of not embarrass them because I mean they're dead. They're not there to be able to experience that, but like to kind of spit on him almost. Like, I'm
Oh,
leaving you
right.
naked and exposed for everyone to see, like, because I think you're a shit person.
Yeah, that would be really messed up. But if he
Yeah.
was like get undressed and made her like stand there and kind of messed with her a little bit, and yeah, who
Just to
knows?
kind of torment her, embarrass her.
Yeah. Ugh, I didn't think about that. That's awful. Well, Teresita had no known enemies. So when police start their investigation, they really don't have any leads to go off of. This attack seemed completely random. And additionally, most of the physical evidence had been destroyed by the fire. So they start going through Teresita's phone records, and police would find she had received two calls that same evening. One of them was around 7:10 p.m. and it was from a friend selling a pair of tickets for an upcoming event. I couldn't find any information about who this friend was though. But the
Okay.
other call that came in was at 7:30 p.m. So like 20 minutes later from Ruth Loeb, her friend from the hospital that she had talked to right before she left. So they talked for about 20 minutes. As far as I know, the call was again totally normal. It seems like they were really good friends because they talked at the hospital and then like literally as soon as she got home, like a few hours later, she's talking to her again.
Mm-hmm.
And the fire would happen around 8:40 p.m. So just a little over an hour later. So one piece of evidence that police also found in the apartment was a memo in Teresita's journal. It appeared to have been written by her, and the memo was like, I guess, a reminder. It said, "Get tickets for AS, theater tickets." So police are trying to figure out who this AS person is because, again, they really don't have anything to go off of. And if this is something she was supposed to do that day, then this AS person could be a suspect.
Mm-hmm.
So police would find out Teresita had a boyfriend, like I said. She had recently had an argument with this boyfriend, and I never could find his name. But the boyfriend's initials were not AS, and they did interview him, and he was quickly ruled out as a suspect. So, without having much of anything to go on, the investigation would quickly dry up. Teresita's case would go cold, and 5 months would pass before the police would get a break. So, in August of 1977, detectives Joseph Stachula and Lee Eplin would receive a very strange phone call from a man named Jose Chua who went by Joe. Joe would explain his wife, Remedios, who went by Remy, had some very important information to share. Joe was a doctor and a surgical assistant, and Remy Chua was a coworker of Teresita's. So they both worked at Edgewater, just like Teresita did. And Joe and Remy were also natives of the Philippines, like Teresita. This is important to the story. So Joey and Remy come down to the station and they start explaining to the police that over the past several months since Teresita's murder, Remy has not been acting like her normal self. Over the last 3 consecutive nights, Remy has been acting incredibly strange and having unexplainable visions and dreams. And Stachula would later tell the press the Chuas were reluctant to talk to him at first. They seemed really embarrassed, but he just said, like, look, I heard you have information and we really need information to solve this case. I don't care what it is. Like, please just tell me what's going on. So the first thing that Dr. Chua says to the detective is he asks him if he believes in the occult or in exorcisms. And the doctor then said that as a medical man, he has been trained to accept many things that could not be explained. But what had happened in his home with Remy was so bizarre that he hesitated to come forward to the police in the first place. So Remy had told Joe night after night that Teresita was appearing to her in dreams and visions, begging for her to go to the police and tell them the truth about what had happened to her.
Um, so Remy is having these dreams?
Yes.
Okay, and Joe and Remy, you said are they married
Yes.
or
And there's a
okay.
photo of them in the slides.
Yes,
They're
I'm looking at it
both,
right here.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they both worked at the same hospital. They're Filipino natives, kind of similar story background wise to Teresita. And yeah, they we'll get into it more, but they really didn't know Teresita. They just worked at the same hospital. So it's really weird that, 5 months have gone by. They didn't really know her. And now Remy's having these like visions about Teresita.
So she's like, I
So,
need to go to the police because Teresita's coming to me in my dreams and telling me this, that I need to tell the truth about it, but I don't know what the truth is that she's wanting me to tell y'all. That's what it's sounding
well,
like to me.
there's more. I wanted to get your initial reaction first, but there is
Okay.
more, trust me.
Okay.
So, Joe would tell the police one night while Remy was taking a nap, she appeared to suddenly go into a trance. Joey had never heard of Miss Basa, nor was he aware of the murder. He just worked at the same hospital as her. So he didn't know about Teresita at all until late last summer when Mrs. Chua unexplainedly got up from a living room chair and went into the bedroom, going into this trance. Remy knew Teresita, but not well. They had met one time at a hospital orientation about 2 years prior. They worked different shifts, they were not friends. But Joey would follow his wife around the house while she's in this trance, and eventually she would lie on the bed, staring blankly. Joe would ask her what was wrong. So his wife would then answer in a voice that was not her own. She was speaking in Teresita Basa's native tongue, Tagalog, a language Remy herself was familiar with but rarely spoke.
What?
The voice would say, "Doctor, I would like to ask for your help. The man who murdered me is still at large." Dr. Chua did not know what to think. He said, quote, "I was really surprised and scared when I asked her name and she answered, and I'm sorry if I'm saying this wrong, Akuya, which means I am in Tagalog, Teresita Basa. But she told me I had nothing to be scared of, and she was really pleading with me to help solve her murder." End quote.
Oh my God.
So before we go any further, I want to know, Carlisa, what would you do if you started having dreams like this and someone was like, "I need you to help me solve my murder," and it was someone you like barely knew from school?
First of all, what a baddie. Like you refusing to die, you're coming back because you are not leaving until they figure this out. Like you need your redemption, baddie. Second of all, like that, I mean, the thought of someone like being not, I don't want to say possessed, but like kind of in a way, but in a way of like speaking a language that they are not fluent in, like, and I don't know what else she's going to say, but I'm assuming probably giving other information that there's no way she could have known that type of thing. So
Correct.
um
Yes.
but it's like to me right now I'm like, why her? Because I mean, like, like you said, they were barely friends. They didn't really know each other that well. Wondering right now is why she chose Remy. If this whole
Right.
thing is true, you know?
Yeah, right. Why not Ruth, her best friend, you know?
Right. Huh.
But I have heard stories before, like, okay, so I went down this big rabbit hole recently with Tyler Henry, the psychic medium, the really famous one. And he'll tell people in readings all the time, well, he's tried to reach out to you before, like this loved one, this person, he's come to you many times. and you didn't hear him or you didn't listen. So I'm wondering if like maybe Teresita tried to reach out to Ruth and Ruth like I don't know, wasn't intuitive or ignored
Hmm.
it and then she was like okay, like maybe she tried to reach out to a bunch of people, who knows.
Well, and you know what? Like, I'm not trying to get off topic a little here, but Tyler, that psychic that you just mentioned, I just watched a
Yeah.
video with him not that long ago where he sat down with a doctor and they scanned his brain
Oh, I just saw
before,
that.
yeah, the one that you sent me.
I was
The
gonna
one that
say, I
you
think I
sent me.
sent you it. Yeah, because I
Yeah,
sent it to a
that
bunch of people.
and while he was doing the reading and what his brain activity was like before that, that he was almost it was almost like he was asleep at some point in
Hmm.
points, and then he'd wake up and then he'd go back to sleep, but he was awake the whole time, and he was he was moving his hands and he was talking like we are right now.
Right.
So he obviously has a certain gift where he can do something like that with his mind, where he can go in and out of that state. Maybe
Yeah.
Remy was able to kind of tune into that as well.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense because, yeah, Tyler's awake the whole time, but according to his brainwaves, he's in and out of consciousness. And Joe would describe Remy being in this trance like state. She's walking around, she's talking, but it's like she's not really there.
Mm-hmm.
So, this voice that is channeling itself through Remy would go on to explain that they had been stabbed and robbed of their jewelry before the perpetrator would set a fire and flee. And they stole a variety of things, including a precious, expensive pearl ring from France that had been passed down to Teresita from her mother. And the voice would eventually name her killer, Alan
Ooh.
Showery, also known as A.S. Alan Showery. So that ticket memo that she had written in her journal, it's the same initials. And the voice would also explain how they knew Alan in the first place. So Alan Showery was an orderly and a respiratory tech. He was in his early 30s and he worked at the same hospital as Teresita, Edgewater. Remy would then wake up after this trance. And the first time that this happened, Joe and Remy decided not to go to the police, which I really don't blame them because I would have, I really don't, I wouldn't have known what to do. Like, I would
Well,
have thought I
like,
was crazy and panicked. And
like, what are you supposed to tell them? A voice in my head told me that this is what happened. I know, I just happen to know every single one of these details, by the way. The police are gonna be like, so you did it. You were there.
right.
Like, you're crazy.
Yeah, I
You
can
have the
imagine
right to
them
remain
being,
silent.
yeah, exactly. I can imagine them being like, you're under arrest. Put your hands behind your back.
Straight
Like,
to
wait
jail.
a minute. Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And there are people who hear this story and are still to this day suspicious of Joe and Remy having some type of involvement in Teresita's murder, allegedly. So, make of that what you will. I personally do not think that, but that's because I have beliefs in the paranormal. So, all of that to say, the voice was persistent, so this first time they don't go to the police, but Teresita keeps coming back. So again, baddie.
Hmm.
And that's right.
Yes, ma'am. Your business is not done.
So this would happen to Remy for a second consecutive night. And the first thing that this voice did was complain and yell at Joe and was like, why didn't you go to the police? Excuse me. And Joe was like, there's no evidence against Showery. Like, how am I supposed to present this to the police in a compelling way? He's a doctor, he's like a pretty logical guy. And he's like, I don't understand. Like, you need to give me proof so that I can help you do this. So the voice would tell Joe he had taken Teresita's jewelry after the murder and given it to his girlfriend, even providing Joe and Remy with phone numbers of friends and family that could verify it was Teresita's jewelry. So now Joe and Remy explain all of this to Detective Statula. And obviously, he doesn't know if he can trust this information. Like, I could totally imagine him sitting there, like, uh huh, uh huh. God,
Mm.
God, I want to go home. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he doesn't have any other leads to go off of. And being a good cop, he decides to check it out, which I'm very glad that he did. So he calls these phone numbers, and it's like friends and family of Teresita. And knowing the pathological report as well, just to backtrack a little bit, that indicated Basa had not been raped in the crime, the policeman would also ask Joe and Remy um, about like if she had been raped, just to kind of quiz them and see, what they would say. And Joe would say she had only told us she had been stabbed. So they're just kind of basically testing them to see if they're lying or not. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he follows up on this lead, and I do have a quote from Statula that I wanted to include because feel like I feel like it's relevant, but it really rubs me the wrong way. So Detective Statula, talking about Joe and Remy, would say, quote, I talk to pimps, prostitutes, and drug addicts in the Belmont area. Dr. and Mrs. Chua are educated, intelligent people who live in a $90,000 home. A distinct change for me. I wanted information on this murder. I listened and acted on what they told me. End quote.
Okay, so if a prostitute had come to you and said the same thing, what you're saying is you would have sent him packing.
Right. Like, tell me you're classist without telling me you're classist.
Uh-huh.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm
I
glad
mean,
he
like,
followed up on the lead, but
I mean, I don't want to say like, oh, I get it, but like to a certain extent, there are certain people who seem to have more credibility than others as far as like you I would, you go to the doctor, you trust them with their medical advice, their care that they give to you. Why? Because you know that they're educated, you know that they're good at what they do. So it's like I feel like it's a kind of a stereotype to be like, "Oh, it's a doctor. You got to trust them." You
oh, it's
know?
100% a stereotype. Yeah, 100% a stereotype. And I
Yeah.
do see it though in the argument of like, okay, well, they have more to lose. You know what I mean? Like by coming forward with
Mhm.
this information, like why would they come forward with this information? Number one, if they were involved, other than guilt. But number
Mhm.
two, they have a lot to lose here. Like they could publish this all over the media and people would think they're insane. They might lose their jobs. So Statula would look into this though. He does a background check on Alan Showery, and the first thing he finds is that Alan Showery lived very close to Teresita's home. He lived at 445 West Surf Street at the time of the murder. After speaking with Teresita and Showery's co-workers, police would also discover he was planning to go over to her apartment on the night of her murder to repair her television. So it's at this point that we know probably the male friend that Teresita was going to meet with after her shift ended was this Alan Showery guy. So now police are like, okay, I think we have enough information to go question Alan. So let's go find him. So they show up at his new apartment, and he lived on the second floor. It's 11:30 p.m. on August 11th, and they question him. Showery would tell police he had plans to repair Teresita's TV that night, but when he got there, he realized he didn't have the right tools. So he just went back home.
I hate when that happens. I go to repair a TV and I forget the tools.
I'm just
I
like,
brought a
how?
pencil instead. Uh-oh.
I would imagine you don't need like really crazy tools to fix a TV, And like, if you've done this
Right.
before, you should have what you need. And Detective
Yeah.
Statula also found Showery's story very hard to believe. Like he didn't believe him. His story just seemed really strange. It wasn't piecing together in a way that made sense. So Statula then at this point decided to talk to Alan Showery's girlfriend, who was a woman named Yanka Kalmuk, and Yanka was pregnant. He asked her if Showery had given her any jewelry recently, and she said, why, as a matter of fact, yes, it was a late Christmas present. So she agreed to let Teresita's close friends and family inspect this jewelry. The
Wait,
same
wait,
friends and
wait.
family. Mm-hmm.
Let me guess. Um, s- did he give her a pearl ring?
Well, yes, he
Mm.
did.
Oh, what about a pendant of some sort?
A jade one of some kind.
Interesting. I
Mm.
wrote that down earlier. Interesting.
Yes. Yes. They contacted the same friends and family that uh, Teresita's spirit had like given the phone numbers to Remy, and they inspected the jewelry. And sure enough, they were like, this is her pearl ring, this is her jade pendant. And Yanka told police that they were late Christmas gifts from Alan. Guilty,
Mm,
guilty.
yeah.
So police would bring Alan Showery back to the station for questioning, and they would confront him with this new information. And he would quickly confess to the murder of Teresita Basa.
Dang, just like that? That easy?
Yeah, he folded. So
Wow.
this is how Alan tells the story. So Alan explained he knew Teresita from work, and Alan had been struggling a lot financially, and his girlfriend is pregnant, so he's stressed. And he had helped Teresita in the past with errands and other tasks, and she would like give him money. So she knew he was struggling, and she would like hire him for odd jobs and pay him. So this asshole knew that she would be a good target for a robbery. So the night that he went to, using air quotes, fix her TV, he planned to rob her. So he shows up to fix the TV, and then he actually did leave after he realized he didn't have the right tools, but it seems like he, didn't bring the right things in the first place. And then he would later return. So Teresita let him back in, and this detail makes me so sad. So she lets him back in. She trusts him. So she turns around to lock the door, and that is when he grabbed her from behind and attacked her.
No.
He then disrobed her afterwards, according to him, to make it look like a sexual crime. So I'm not sure if he stabbed her before or after he disrobed her, but it sounds like after, because they didn't find any blood on like any clothes as far as I know. So he stabbed her. She's lying on her back. He then took her mattress and placed it over her body and then set her on fire. He would later sign a confession and be arrested, being held at Cook County Jail awaiting trial. So, any thoughts so far before we get to the trial?
I mean, just how sad is it? Like, you being a good person can just get you killed. Like, she literally went out of her way to help this guy because she knew he was struggling. She, out of the kindness of her heart, she literally came up with jobs, is what it seemed like, to help him earn money. And the fact that he took advantage of that is just so upsetting. Like, I don't get it. I feel like there are so many different ways he could have gone about that. The murder was not even a viable option. I feel like it's just crazy to me.
No, not at all. And
Right.
he didn't even give her a chance.
Wow.
And like I said, Alan was struggling financially, so he couldn't exactly afford an attorney. So he had a public defender, and this guy's name was William Swano. So the trial begins, and Swano called for the murder charge to be dismissed because he said police had arrested Allen on nothing more than Remy's bizarre story. That's his viewpoint. And he would say, never to my knowledge has a man been arrested because of a supernatural vision. Police have never before been informed of a criminal's name by a voice from the grave. And some people say this is how this became known as the Voice Beyond the Grave trial, is from this quote. But the judge decides to go ahead with the trial. And my whole thing, too, is like, yeah, it is crazy, but they didn't just go off of Remy's testimony. Like, they found the jewelry in his possession. He admitted to the murder. He signed a confession. Like, I feel like they have some actual evidence here.
Right. It's not like we're in court right now because Remy told us that the ghost of Teresita came to her and told her that you murdered her. Like you said, no, they investigated it first. They got all the evidence they needed. They spoke to the guy, and now here they are. Like,
right. This isn't the Salem witch trials. Like,
exactly.
We have some actual. It is crazy, but like we do have some evidence here. So the judge is like, no, we're going ahead with the trial. And state's attorney Bernard Carey, who had taken a personal interest in the case, was assigned also as like a top, or he assigned, sorry, one of his top prosecutors to be like the prosecutor for this trial. So this guy's name was Thomas J. Organ. And Organ would tell the media, quote, in my 5 years as a prosecutor, handling 70 or so felony cases, I have never run into anything like this, end quote.
I would imagine so. I mean, I haven't heard anything about it either.
Yeah, I feel like that's like the understatement of the century.
Right. Well, another question that I have too is why would he just so happen to relocate after the murder? Like, did he have any sort of reasoning behind that? Do you know if they asked him about it or what was going on with that?
I don't know, but my other thought is like his lease could have just been up. It could have been coincidental, but I don't know. It could have been intentional. It's hard to say. There really isn't a lot of information about this case. There might be more in that book, which I feel like I just need to read.
Okay.
So authorities said that they were satisfied that the Chuas, Joe and Remy, were in no way involved in Miss Basa's death. And Organ would also say he had interviewed the Chuas at length. And though he was skeptical of the story in the beginning, he no longer was when the trial would begin. He would describe Dr. Chua as a learned professional and a reputable person. But nearly 2 years later, October 2nd, 1978, when the case would go to trial, even though he initially gave a full confession, Showery would plead not guilty. The case became known as the Voice from the Grave trial, centering largely on Remy Chua's testimony, telling the 8 male and 4 female jury, Basa spoke her death through her lips. So prosecution, despite this not guilty plea, they're not worried. They present 13 witnesses over the course of several days. But on the 5th day of the trial, Allen would claim he only confessed to the crime because police had fed him information and threatened to arrest him and his pregnant girlfriend. So he's saying that he panicked and police basically like forced him, coerced. It was a coerced confession is what he's saying.
Okay, then explain how you got this woman's jewelry. Like,
right. And as far as I know, he has no explanation for that. I don't know if he was just trying to say like, oh, I just robbed her, I didn't kill her, or what was happening. But it seems like this was like maybe advice from his public defender. I'm really not sure. Because again, we just don't know a lot. So sorry if it sounds like I'm speculating a lot, guys. There's really just not a lot of information. So he at this time pleads not guilty, and then he changes his whole story from what he told police. So he would claim he had dinner with his girlfriend on the night of the murder before drinking and playing darts with a neighbor around 7:30 p.m. Whether or not this neighbor could verify this story, I don't know. And the end result would be a deadlocked jury and a mistrial on January 26th, 1979. But the case would then be retried for the second time, February 23rd, 1979. And this time, Alan would plead guilty. So he's guilty, he's not guilty, he's guilty.
Okay. He's having trouble figuring out what he wants.
Make up your mind, sir.
His
So,
lawyer was probably like, listen, you can plead not guilty, and um maybe this deadlock was your ticket out of going to jail forever, because if they say you are guilty, he could have gotten the death sentence at that point, like if he pleaded not guilty, or a longer sentence. Like if you plead guilty, you might be able to get a lesser sentence, right?
yeah, that's very true. And it does seem like that is probably why he did it, because he would receive a 14-year sentence for murder, robbery, and arson. And
Okay, okay, Chicago.
I don't know too if like it was because of the lack of physical evidence to the murder. Like it's even even physical evidence to a robbery is still a little bit loose. Like yeah, they found the jewelry, but they didn't find his fingerprints at the scene or his hairs or like and I mean it's also like the 80s when all of this is going on, but it just doesn't seem like they had much else that they could go off of. Like they have his confession and they have the jewelry. So I don't know if that was part of it, but still, like the 14-year sentence really bothers me.
So they charged him with murder
Yeah.
and arson and robbery,
Yeah.
and only gave him 14 years. Cause like
Yeah.
I might understand if it was like, oh, he only could be charged with the robbery and arson because that's all they could prove, and he got 14 years. But you're saying they charged him with the murder, that is included in the 14 years? In what world does someone only get 14 years for murder?
Yeah, according to like the sources I could find, it said the judge sentenced Showery to terms of 4 years each for the armed robbery and arson to run concurrent within the 14-year sentence for murder. So it was like he gets a 14-year sentence period for murder, a 4-year sentence for robbery, a 4-year sentence for arson, but they're going to do it all consecutively. So it ends up just being a 14-year sentence.
What the heck?
Like a lot of these sentences, they often do not serve the full time. So Alan Showery would only serve 6 years and he would be released on parole in 1983.
Y'all about to bring Teresita back. She's about to be like, really? Okay. I thought I was done. I was enjoying my time in heaven. All right, and I'm back.
She's going to start like haunting the judge's dreams. She's like, "Are you kidding me?"
She's like,
Be
here's what's
so
gonna
for
happen.
real.
We're gonna go to trial. I'm going to speak for you. Okay. I'm gonna give the sentence and then I'll be on my way out.
She's like channeling through the judge.
Oh my
Yeah, I feel
gosh.
like Teresita would be like, "Did I stutter? I named him. I
Mm.
told you exactly what happened, and you're only gonna do a 14-year sentence."
Do you see the thumbs up that just popped up on your
I
face?
thought
What
you
was
did.
no,
I thought
what was that?
I thought you did that.
No, you went like that, and then like a bubble with a thumbs up came up.
That was so weird. So for people listening,
Wait, Teresita? Is that
hello?
you?
Wait, let me explain. For people listening, I just did a thumbs up to the screen because I was like, "Great job, idiots." And then like a bubble with like a thumbs up icon because we're on Zoom just like appeared on the screen. I thought Karlisa did it, but hello. That's really weird. If anybody knows how Zoom works, please let me know if that's a thing. I hope that picks up in the video when I export it. Like you can see the little thumb up thing. I'll have to see if it does. So while Alan Showery
Yeah.
had served time for Teresita's murder, questions would continue to linger about the case. For example, Remy Chua and Alan Showery were not strangers. They worked in the same department at Edgewater with Basa. Remy Chua also suspected Alan Showery of making complaints about her quality of work at the hospital, and this resulted in Remy losing her job. And one day before Remy's first possession, Chua admitted that she thought Alan Showery had prank called her. So Chua's possession or psychic symptoms did all start within hours of discovering she had lost her job and she had allegedly gotten a prank call from Alan. So we do know that like Remy didn't like Alan, and there was some contention between the two of them.
Okay.
Detective Statula himself also expressed skepticism when it came to how he got the information in the first place about the case from Remy. But at the end of the day, he believed Alan Showery was at the very least involved, and everything that they had discovered, like the jewelry and, everything that Remy told them, ended up being true. The Chuas would also go on to live their version of events in a book called A Voice from the Grave, and it was written by their friend Carol Mercado. Author Ray Johnson also wrote that he tried to track down Alan Showery more recently, because remember, he's out living his life. He found out that he was living in New York, but he never was able to track Alan down. So to some people, this case goes down in true crime history as one of the most bizarre crossroads of police work and the paranormal. Using Basa's voice from beyond the grave and basically channeling through another person's body to solve her own murder. But there are other theories. So let's get into it. For those who have followed and written about the case over the years, people have speculated a possible subconscious fear or aversion that Remy Chua may have had of Alan Showery. Like her gut was telling her something was off about him and to look into him. Or that Remy Chua witnessed or overheard maybe Showery bragging or talking about his involvement in Basa's murder, and she kind of processed it subconsciously and then dreamed about it later. So basically, this whole theory, to summarize it, would be like, maybe this was all a coincidence and she had like a dream, like the psychic situation was a coincidence and it was actually just a dream because she absorbed this information subconsciously. Alan gave her red flags.
That would make sense if she didn't have specific details like these phone numbers and like all that personal information. If she had just overheard him talking about it or admitting to something and her subconscious is doing this to her, like how is she getting all of that particular information? That is just what doesn't make sense about that theory.
Right. Yeah, I feel like it makes way more sense that she had some type of like psychic ability, and that's the second theory is people think Remy Chua could have been psychic or that this was a real paranormal possession from Teresita herself, just refusing to rest until her murder was solved. There are other people, though, that have suspected Remy Chua and maybe even her husband, the Dr. Joe, were involved in the murder of Teresita Basa, but no motive has been found. According to Mysterious Chicago, Showery's lawyers tried to suggest in court that Remy Chua was the real killer, that she had sold Showery the jewelry, which explained why Kalmuk, the girlfriend, had it. And then Remy just came up with this possession idea after she lost her job at the hospital. However, Seltzer adds that Remy Chua was never considered a suspect. So she was never considered a suspect. She was interviewed at length. She was ruled out. So they just kind of threw this idea out in court, like the defense did. Like, oh, well, it must have been Remy that was the killer.
With the jewelry, though, like if Remy really had given it to Alan, when he was confronted about that, I feel like he immediately would have been like, no, hold on. This girl named Remy sold it to me. She gave it to me. I paid her this much for it or whatever. And then I gave it to my girlfriend. But he didn't say any of that. Like you said earlier, it seemed like he never really had an explanation for that. So
Right.
for and if they were working together, like there was no reason for her to turn on him like that. It just doesn't make sense.
Right. And like, why would he take the fall for Remy? You know, it just doesn't really make sense. And don't
Exactly.
get me wrong, like coerced confessions are definitely a thing. We do see them in true crime cases all the time. So I'm not saying that it's not possible, but given like the whole story and the evidence, it just seems far fetched to me, especially because like she had that memo in her notebook, like I'm gonna give these tickets to AS, and oh, I'm meeting this male friend, he's gonna come over, blah blah blah. So like if Remy was involved, it would have been like her orchestrating, and like for what? It's not like Teresita had a bunch of money. Like it really didn't make sense. And Remy and Joe were well off, you know?
Yeah, they were well off and they weren't friends with this guy. So again, like what motive would they have had to work together at all?
Yeah, it really does not make sense. But we do have to point out, like, Remy lost her job because of Alan. So she could have been unhappy with him. And I will say, like, the timing of her psychic trance things, because remember, those happened months after Teresita's murder. The timing of that and losing her job is very, at the very least, it is coincidental. But I personally don't think that they were involved. So, Karlisa, what do you think?
I have a lot that I am thinking about. I mean, this is just crazy. So I know that there are definitely connections to things that are on this earth and outside of this earth. I mean, I have experienced it myself. I know that you have as well.
Mhm.
So to think that this is just completely absurd, is it? That's definitely not what I'm thinking. There's definitely something going on here, but is it hard to completely believe that all of this is true, that Teresita came back from the grave and was speaking through this woman? Yes, absolutely. It's hard to completely believe. I'm not going to sit here and say it's absolutely impossible. Uh, there was definitely some sort of connection there. Um, Remy obviously had some sort of strong connection with other things outside of this world that were trying to maybe help this woman for some reason, but I believe her and Joe. I mean, honestly, like everything that you've told me, they have no motive. I mean, other than the fact that Remy didn't like this guy, but like for her to just pin a murder on him. I'm like, what'd she do? Like pin the ring and the pendant and everything on him. Like it doesn't make sense. So I definitely think that this guy did it. I think it was Alan. Um, I think he is as guilty as the day is long. Um, but it's a really crazy story to
It is
be like
very crazy.
fully on board with. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It is very, very crazy, but like I literally can't think of anybody else doing the murder, especially the fact that it was like a brutal stabbing. She got undressed, they like set the apartment on fire, and it would have had to have been someone she knows. And if Remy's telling the truth, she met her briefly 2 years ago at an orientation. And Alan worked the same shifts as her, and she said she's meeting a male friend. Like, it just doesn't. It doesn't make sense to me that Remy was involved. And Joe, if he's telling the truth, he didn't know her at all. So that kind of rules him out.
So Teresita's friend Ruth, you said they were pretty close. They consistently talked. She told her what she was doing that night, that she was meeting a friend. I'm wondering, like, why did she not say, I'm meeting this guy from work, Alan, he's gonna come over and fix my TV? Like, why just say, I'm meeting with a male friend? Why write in her book, like, AS? Like, it's kind of like she's beating around the bush for some reason. Like, was she
Hmm.
ashamed maybe to be seen with this guy? I'm wondering, like, why the hesitation there, you know?
Yeah, I have no idea that. Yeah, that is an interesting thought. I don't know. It doesn't seem like Alan was the most popular guy at work, but also it doesn't seem like Teresita was the type to be like classist or judgmental. I mean, she was letting him do like odd jobs and kind of helping him out when he was in a financial bind. But I mean, if Ruth was her best friend, it is kind of weird that she didn't just
Her
like
best
say
friend.
who it was. Yeah, her best friend.
Her best friend. I mean,
I
maybe
think,
maybe she didn't like think it was really that big of a deal. That could have happened, but it it's just it was something that I wrote down that I was like interesting. Like I wonder why she just kind of kept it so brief.
well, and I know too that, Teresita had a boyfriend. They had had an argument. I wonder what the argument was about. I wonder if he was the jealous type. Maybe Ruth was friends with the boyfriend. And so she was like, I don't want to ruffle feathers. Let me just, maybe, you know what I mean? Like maybe the boyfriend was just kind of a jealous type and didn't want, like she didn't want to let him know that a guy was going to her house or something. I have no idea.
I didn't even think
We
about
are
that. That's a good
we
point.
are just wildly speculating, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm doing a lot of that right now because I just I'm just so gobsmacked at all the information you just threw at me.
Well, any final thoughts before we go to an outro?
Um, I wish that this would have been at a later time period where they could have done DNA and
Hmm.
done a lot more with this case. Because I'm sure as far as like you said, as physical evidence, they didn't have a lot. If it would have happened maybe in a later time period, they would have been a bit more careful in what they collected, and there would have been some more definite answers. So I definitely think the time period played a role in this, but I hope that Teresita is living her best life up in heaven. You know,
Living her best afterlife.
I mean, like, it wasn't, I wouldn't call it justice. Like, if this guy, Alan, really did do it, it definitely wasn't justice, but at least he had to do some sort of time for what he may or may not have committed.
Right. Yeah, yeah. It is sad that it was only a 6 year time. Like that's really nothing for a brutal murder. We'll likely never know if what happens to Remy Chua was a result of Teresita coming from beyond the grave, but this case is certainly perplexing. And that, everybody, is the absolutely insane story of Teresita Basa, the woman who solved her own murder. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to let me know. Leave a 5-star review. If you're listening on Spotify, you can drop a comment for the specific episode and let me know your thoughts. You can also leave YouTube comments. I always love to hear y'all's feedback. You can leave 5-star reviews like this one from Mad Muse, who said, incredibly interesting episodes. Thank you, Kaydra, for the wonderfully refreshing podcast. Could listen for hours. Looking forward to the next episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, I would love if you hit the subscribe button as well so you can keep up with when new videos come out. And if you really want to support the show, if you are just so perplexed and you can't get enough, then get on the Patreon. Join the Perplexed Society. It's just $3 a month, less than a cup of coffee. And that gives you access to so many things. I have my Hell Camp documentary coverage on there, American Nightmare coverage. I am releasing on Monday some of my watch lists, my spring watch recommendations for 2024. So it's like a bunch of shows and movies that I've seen that I've just loved, and I give you guys a breakdown of all my thoughts. So there's tons of cool stuff on there. If you want to just support the show too, you can pay $1 a month on there, and that is much appreciated because I do not qualify for any type of ad revenue or monetization of any sort. So this podcast is completely independent and fully funded by you guys. So when you do that, it helps me pay for equipment, keep the show up and running, pay for this Zoom that we are on right now. So that is appreciated. Same thing with like my merch and my Buy Me a Coffee link. That's also going to help me keep the show going. And then you get some cute merch. So go check out those links if you want. Last announcement, I just wanted to say, at the time that I am recording this, I have reached 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So thank you so much. Hooray.
Yay!
That's a big milestone for me. I was hoping to reach 1,000 subs by the end of 2024. That was like a goal I had made for myself, and we're hitting it in April. So that is amazing. I think this episode will drop in May, but you guys get what I'm saying. Thank you for subscribing to the YouTube channel. That is really, really cool. And if you guys have any requests, because I want to do something to celebrate 1,000 subs, let me know if you have any particular requests. And with that in mind, sorry, I just remembered, I do have one last announcement, one last one. I'm going to do a Q&A for 2024. I'm thinking I'm going to do it live. So I'm still trying to figure out how that's going to work. And I don't know the date yet, so I'll keep you guys posted. But what I need from you is to send me your questions. And it can be anything. I got a question the other day that was like, have you ever seen a cryptid? And what's your favorite cryptid and why? Like, I love stuff like that. So just send me questions. You can drop them in the YouTube comments. You can DM me on Instagram, email me the questions, whatever. I'm going to be compiling those throughout 2024, and then I'll do a live and just talk to you guys, answer your questions. I might throw some other things in. So bring me your questions and I'll keep you posted on that. And I think that is everything. So Karlisa, I want to thank you for coming on this episode. It's been such a long time.
Thank you for having me. Yes, it was. And I have a 1,000 subs request video for you.
Ooh, do you want to say it now or do you want to send it to me?
I want to say it now.
Okay, say it now for the people.
You watch different episodes of 1,000 Ways to Die. And you talk about what you think about some of those particular instances and how perplexing they are.
Oh, that's a good idea. I am grabbing my pen. I'm writing this down because that show is Nightmare Fuel. And Karlisa and I used to watch that show when we were younger at the house, back when everybody still had cable. I'll have to find out where I can find those episodes. 1,000 Ways to Die.
I know that there's for sure clips on YouTube. It's just some of them are just so crazy. Like some of them are even funny. Like they're just so crazy. Like I think it'd be funny to get your thoughts. Maybe even from a medical standpoint. For some of them, the likelihood.
There was that guy who I can't remember if it was a hot dog eating contest or it was just a random thing where he was just eating one hot dog, but I remember there was an episode about this guy choking to death on a hot dog.
It was a hot dog eating contest.
It was. Okay. And I remember mom saying something like, that's why you shouldn't eat too fast.
No, the one that stuck with me was the woman who had the boob implants and went on the airplane and her boobs exploded because of the pressure that was in the air because they weren't like put in right. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, lots to choose from.
Oh no. Yeah, okay. So you heard it here first, people. Sounds like we have a really, really good contender, but I still would love you guys to send me your ideas too. And if it doesn't make it for the 1,000 video, then I love requests anyway, and I'll add it to the queue. I will probably do it later. So uh, I think that's everything. You all are amazing. Thank you again, Carlisa, for joining us. And I hope you all have a great week and stay safe. And I will talk to you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.